This podcast is sponsored by Adelaide. You've probably heard of Adelaide by now. This month, they announced a new product, Adelaide for Publishers. For the first time, publishers can leverage attention metrics to curate inventory, deliver attention insights, and drive higher CPMs. Join the Weather Company, NPR, Westwood One, Cumulus Media, and other leading publishers taking advantage of the attention economy's most popular metric, AU. Maybe one day Mark will convince me to sell guaranteed AU slots on Marketecture, but probably not. Check out adelaidemetrics.com/AFP for more information. Welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. I am Ari Paparo. I'm joined today by a special guest, Gokul Rajaram, one of the most important people in the history of digital advertising, and he's shaking his head, but you know it's true. Let's look, Gokul, thank you for being here, but let me talk about your background before you introduce yourself. So, effectively created AdSense at Google, did the DoubleClick acquisition, was kind of the brains behind the DoubleClick acquisition, was the head of ads at Meta, was a leader of product engineering at Square, is currently on the board of The Trade Desk and Pinterest and Coinbase, and is a prolific angel investor. Is any of that not accurate?
It is, but Ari, you've built DoubleClick, beeswax, the future of DSPs, the past of DSPs. I mean, so there's many people. Thank you again for the kind intro. Very excited to be here, my friend.
Well, thanks for being here. And so we'll have a conversation with Gokul, and then in the second half of the podcast, we'll bring Eric Franchi in, who is going to give us a report from southern France, where neither me or Gokul have the expense accounts to hang out and drink the rosé. So we're getting to real business here. As a slight editorial note, because Gokul's on the board of the Trade Desk, he's not able to publicly speak about them. So I know many of our listeners would love to hear about the Trade Desk and the inner workings, but unfortunately, we're not going to talk about that. Let's rewind. I want to start with AdSense. So I've heard you described as the godfather of AdSense, or I don't know, the inventor of AdSense. Is that not accurate, or is that accurate? What's the story?
It is not accurate. I think, first of all, I would say AdSense was the brainchild of Sergey Brin and Susan Wojcicki. As Ari, you know, we all worked for Susan. She used to run ads at Google. And Sergey really came up with the idea of mapping just like Google. If you think about Google search takes keywords and figures out what web pages are the right fit for the keywords. Sergey had the idea, along with Susan, of, hey, what if we do the opposite? Given a web page, find out what keywords are the best fit for that, what keywords best represent the content on that page. So AdSense started in that way, with Sergey drafting a few engineers to start building out the matching technology. Really leveraging the web search index that already existed. And then I joined as a product manager. But I think it was really a team. Obviously, we were involved in bringing that vision to life. So I think success has many, many parents, as they say, and I'm lucky to be one of the people who contributed a little bit. But I would say what AdSense is today, I mean, look, I think if we hadn't bought DoubleClick, and we'll get to that, I don't think AdSense would be what it is. And you know, the Google network, obviously DoubleClick played a critical role. But Sergey and Susan, I would say, are the parents of AdSense, truly.
I hadn't realized that Sergey was that involved. I wanted to kind of bring this up a bit later, but I'll bring it up now, which is that at Google, there was this discussion that ads were a form of search results, or ads were a form of search content. I don't remember the exact phrasing of that. And that seems to really be a part of this story, where it was about matching. It was about thinking of ads as a useful piece of content within the user's discovery process.
That's right. Exactly. I think the goal was to make ads useful and helpful, truly. And so especially in commercial content, back then blogs were the thing, right? I mean, even today you see Substacks, but we were seeing the flowering. Blogger had just been bought by Google. And so it was in January or February of 2003 when Ev and the team joined Google. And so we realized that blogs were just sprouting. And in order for any of these creative mediums to work, you need to also provide monetization. Just like YouTube, I think, would not be as successful with creators if they didn't also have a way for those creators to monetize. So back then it was text blogs, and AdSense, we felt, was our way to help these bloggers monetize. So that was the primary, I guess, customer segment or ideal customer profile, which is the bloggers. And they had text content. And how do we make, most of it was content. It was very little commercial intent. But by introducing ads, we could make it more helpful for the consumer, but also provide a source of revenue for the blogger.
Yeah, as a former blogger, and I had blogs back then, the ability to put an AdSense tag on your page and then just start making money was so magical. And the money would vary based on the quality of the content, which was also kind of magical. If the more concentrated what you wrote about, the more likely you are to find a match.
And people would start to tailor content sometimes to get ads because they became really smart about, what content to write to get high CPC ads.
I used to write about New York City, and I'd find that like tourist packages it would be a really good thing to write about. So AdSense evolved. It was text ads for a while, and then slowly but surely Google started adding image ads as demand into AdSense. And then Google started investing in what we would currently call ad tech, the buy side and sell side tech. But there was definitely a perception that it wasn't going that well, or it was going to be like a D-Day invasion where it was going to be pretty painful to take the beaches of this giant advertising world. Take us through what it felt like as kind of one of the leaders of the product team back then and how you thought about this giant world of more traditional advertising and how you might attack it.
I think you're absolutely right. It initially started with text ads, and then we started adding image ads. And I think image ads work very well for small and medium advertisers. But as we went to larger advertisers to use it, they all wanted to use something called a third-party pixel along with these image ads. And we were like, what the hell are these things? Then we realized, oh my gosh, these things are these trackers that put cookies on people's computers, and they basically track people, and then they allow the platform that controls them or owns these cookies to then do interesting things with them. And so there was a massive discussion and debate inside Google around whether we should allow third-party tracking cookies or not, and third-party pixels or not. And for a long time, we resisted. And I think we got many people to do experiments, but we always felt that as soon as the experiment or test budget ended, they would say, well, it worked well, inventory is good, but I need the third-party cookie, because they wanted to account for view-through impressions, really. And AdSense didn't provide, that was one reason, but the other reason was really the need for targeting and building audiences and other purposes. And we tried to build our own tracking pixel, then of course, classic Google style. And then it didn't get enough uptake. Why? Because of 11 letters, DOUBLECLICK. And then turned out publisher inventory was also hard. Turns out that we were very successful in getting inventory from blogs and primary inventory being on the page. But you quickly realize that we were not on the page with many larger publishers. They would load us into, as you know well, into the double-click DFP system, and then we would only see remnant inventory. So we really didn't have the ability on the publisher side to compete for real inventory, and the sales teams would always get first dibs, even though AdSense would monetize better. And I think even with double-click acquisition, that wasn't fully solved till header bidding came into the picture. But really, we felt on both sides. On one side, on the agency side, the large advertiser side, they wanted these pixels, which we didn't really have. We had a basic product, but it wasn't really satisfying the needs. On the publisher side, we were basically being stymied from truly seeing all the inventory and competing fairly for all the inventory versus a waterfall model that, if you remember, there was this waterfall where you would have you set up these priority things, and direct sales would get first dips and the second, third, and we were like, why? And then who knew why? No one knew why, but that is the way it was set up. We felt to really change the system, we had to be the system. And so that's why, that fateful day when we went and did, we all met for the first time as two different teams. And after several months of discussion, I think the world of advertising was changed forever with that acquisition.
I think it was. I want to hear more about the internal dialogue. But one thing I will say from my experience working at Google was that the one thing Google hates more than anything else is being disintermediated. And you see that because they built a browser, they built a phone operating system. They hate just being behind some other company more than anything in the world. And I think that largely has to do with the experience that many companies had during the browser wars, where Netscape failed because it was behind Microsoft or dependent on Microsoft. And that was a really big part of the culture that Larry and Sergey felt in their bones. They didn't want to be dependent on anybody else.
And I think the same thing, if you look at Meta, right? One of the things that Mark hates the most is that he's dependent on Apple and Google. Because if you're an app on somebody else's platform, the platform owns the rules. And I think it's true for many, many industries. And you're absolutely right. That was the dynamic.
So how did the DoubleClick acquisition by Google come about? Who were the champions? Was it you and Tim Armstrong? Was it a wider group? How hard was it to get alignment internally around it?
I think it was really Tim and Susan and me. Tim Tim Armstrong on the sales side and Susan and me on the product side. And to be honest, I don't think most of Google, and this is true even us, we didn't fully understand DoubleClick's capabilities. We knew at a high level what it did because we knew what the customers wanted, but truly the product, I mean, it was a legacy product even then in 2007. It had been built for 11 years. So there was a lot of stuff that had been built that was used in esoteric ways that very few people knew except for you and Neil and Scott Spencer and a few others like Brad and a few others. But we kind of knew what it was. And then we did look at Atlas at the same time, as was important. So we looked at both DoubleClick and Atlas. And we came twice. I think if I remember correctly, we did in 2005, 2006, one round of discussions. And when we just didn't feel we were ready because we didn't know enough about the display advertising space. So then we went back, spent another 9 months trying to build it out, understand it better. And then we went back for round two. Then we had more conviction around what we wanted. And that DoubleClick was the right player because of the Atlas didn't have a good publisher side platform or any publisher side platform. And so we felt that even though it was spurred by advertisers, the publisher side was equally valuable. I think to this day, I couldn't tell you, I mean, you were in Google. I don't know which one proved to be more valuable. Was the publisher inventory or was it access to that or was the advertising?
Yeah, I think we talked about this, or I've talked about this in a different pod, but it's kind of funny. I think you're remembering it as being more balanced than it was. In my opinion, the deal was 100% publisher focused. I even had some people tell me.
Because we could justify the dollars. We could justify the dollars instantly.
Exactly. So access to remnant inventory was very easy to calculate what it would eventually be worth to Google. Whereas the buy side was not well understood at all. And at the time, the buy side did not have a DSP. So it was an ad server only. I had someone at Google say, well, we bought DoubleClick for DFP, but we got the buy side for free. And I was in charge of the buy side at the time. So I guess that made me feel okay.
And it turns out the DSP became a very important part in DoubleClick. Google selling the DSP and DFP together with, of course, you don't need to comment, but favorable economic terms to Google, in interesting ways did result in. But yeah, I mean, I think a part of it was also the team and the leadership team, right? I think meeting with you, with Neil, with Scott, with Brad, the product leadership team, we didn't really I think we got some exposure engineering team, but we felt, the engineering team was also, there was a big chunk in India, if I remember correctly, in Pune back then. And so, but really it was around, hey, this product leadership team can come in and build the next set of, next roadmap or next generation of Google's off-platform, maybe even over time on-platform advertising products. And that's what happened. I think you guys became leaders, not just for DoubleClick, but for Google. And drove a lot of Google's display advertising strategy over and advertising strategy broadly over the next decade.
Yeah, and to their credit, a lot of the leadership team of DoubleClick's engineering group are still there and have leadership positions at Google. So there may have been some initial feeling like the engineers weren't Google quality or something. There was certainly some conflict when it first started, but the best of the DoubleClick team proved themselves and now have leadership positions.
And it was impossible to interview. I mean, that's the first company. YouTube was so small that we could kind of see who the people were, but DoubleClick, literally we had to just take the whole company regardless of, it was the first business buy that Google ever did, right? And so we just had to take the company and figure out what to do with the people and org later. And I'm sure there were lots of fun stories that you can narrate around integration.
There were some very fun stories, but I don't want to bog down on that. I want to go to the next stage of your career because it's a great contrast, which is, I guess you were recruited to be a leader of the ad team at Facebook. How is that the same, different, and how do you contrast like the company's approaches to ads?
It's very interesting. So the way I got to Facebook was through Sheryl Sandberg, who was at Google, went over to Facebook as CEO, and we had worked together at Google. And she was a sponsor of, I had started a company called Chai Labs after Google. And 2.5 years, we were building a bunch of contextual, not advertising products or consumer products using NLP and stuff like that. And then it was going okay. But Sheryl basically wanted someone to come in and run the ads product team at Facebook. And so she convinced Mark that we were a good fit and things worked out and we ended up joining Facebook. And we joined Facebook in 2010. Facebook had started in 2004. Around 2006 or 7, Facebook ads essentially had built an ad system, but it was really copying the Google ad system back then. It was a keyword-based ad system. And the fundamental difference between Google and Facebook keywords is this. If on Google, you search for lawyers, you're looking for lawyers. You want to find lawyers. But or accountants say, If on Facebook you search for an accountant, you're basically not looking for accountants. You're basically finding someone who's an accountant. It's a very different model, and search doesn't work the same way. And so we were in a search mindset. And so the ads, people were just importing their campaigns from Google. We even built import tools that imported campaigns from Google to Facebook. Utter disaster. So it took us, and to be honest, I think because many of us came from Google, it took us a while to strip back and really think first principles around what matters. And we all thought that at first, a lot of focus was around the social context of Facebook. So we tested a lot of social signals in these ads to make the ads better. But the fundamental thing that changed the direction of Facebook ads beyond mobile was targeting. It was targeting based on identity. It was a fact that Facebook knew who you were. And most importantly, we could connect that with the advertiser's understanding of who you were. So the fundamental innovation at Facebook was something called custom audiences, which then Google and others copied. But that fundamentally transformed Facebook advertising and again advertising. So I feel very proud in some ways to be involved with the custom audiences product. And by the way that ads were bought, also Google copied and Twitter copied later, which is our interface to buy ads. So we basically completely threw away. Google had built a interface around keywords. We threw away that interface completely. And we said, you've got to start with objectives. So in 2012, we launched a brand new interface to buy ads. You start with your objective, and based on your objective, you get taken down completely different paths. And it really forced you to articulate your objective up front. If you say that your objective is reach, then you should not care about click-through. It forced you to articulate what it is. Because what happens is advertisers would say, I want reach. Oh, but then your click-through rate is low. Hang on. If you want reach and frequency. That's what you should optimize for. If you want click-through rate, tell us you want clicks. You can't say that I want reach also. You got to tell us explicitly, what do you want? What is your objective? And so I think that changed. And I think I haven't seen AdWords in a while, but I think Google copied a chunk of it. Twitter copied it almost wholesale. And basically that became, so I'm very proud. I'm more proud in some ways. I'm as proud of the work at Facebook, of the team's work at Facebook during those times, really coming with the custom audiences and the way to buy ads that I think has become a standard across most platforms.
Those are both huge innovations. As a product manager, presenting a UI that's like reverse of the way people think about it must have been really scary. I bet you got tons of feedback from people that said, I don't want to tell you my objectives. I just want to set it up, right? I know what I'm doing. I have 10,000 line items I need to import. Build me a bulk importer, not this silly ask my objectives thing.
Exactly. So what we did was, I think this is true for most business interfaces. You're absolutely right that there's going to be a small set of power users, the agency people and so on, who just don't give a crap about all of this. They just want to upload their campaigns straight up in bulk. So we basically said, okay, if you really don't want to, we're not going to give you any controls. We're going to show the entire system to you. It's a spreadsheet. So we gave them a spreadsheet view that they can use, or if you don't want a spreadsheet view, here it is. Or third option is an API. So you have an API, a spreadsheet view, and this view. It turns out this view became good enough that the vast majority of SMBs and mid-market folks used the simple objective-based view because it also does optimization. I think if you use spreadsheet, many times you kind of think you're doing a good job, but the reality is the algorithms underneath are so good and getting so good that you've got to let them free. I think if you constrain them too much, they're unable to optimize. So we wanted to make sure that you give it some degrees of freedom and let it do its magic, because ultimately algorithms have much more data than humans. So I think the humans who thought they could, basically nickel and dime or really constrain the algorithm, I don't think they get suboptimal results. You've got to give degrees of freedom. But you're right. I think we did them escape hatch for those folks who felt they wanted full.
Ultimately, there are some people who get paid to look like they know what they're doing, and that's always an issue. My last question about Facebook. Do you feel that through this effort, through custom audiences and uploading all this data, do you think they get a fair shake on the privacy side of things, or do they just get pilloried by the media on some of the privacy stuff?
I think it's pilloried by the media. I personally think Facebook is one of those companies that means really well. Within the company, there's so much focus on helping users, and the company is so proud of things that help users. I think connect with long lost family members and cares deeply, but sometimes does a poor job communicating its actions and doesn't fully understand. Almost, I don't think it's become better, but almost like a teenager or a young person that didn't understand that there are repercussions of things you do that you don't fully understand and how you're perceived. I think, especially, some of the Cambridge Analytica stuff, I wasn't there at that time, but I feel the company means well and always, got into a phase where it was just not taking into account how certain actions will be perceived, even though they did it well-meaningly. So I very much believe that the company wants to be and is a force of good in the world. And they just do it in ways that sometimes are not perceived properly. But I think the company has been a force of good. I can't imagine life without Facebook, and I think most people can't. Facebook deserves our help and constructive feedback to figure out how to get better versus like, oh, you're bad. Okay, what does that mean? That doesn't help anybody. Here's a tangible way in which you can help people.
Are you a Facebook guy or an Instagram guy?
I am a WhatsApp guy, ironically. I spend I use WhatsApp more than anything because turns out my portfolio founders, family members, etc., are all global, and WhatsApp seems to become, it can be used without any fees. And actually, WhatsApp and messaging is making $1 billion in revenue now, right? Finally, they opened up a non-ad channel just from messaging, and I think it's going to grow to 5 or 10 billion because it's much cheaper for companies to use it for messaging, for CRM, and so on than using SMS, which has fees. So they're $1 trillion.
Yeah, I only use it for people outside the U.S., but they seem to love it. So let's talk about fintech a little bit. You had quite a run at Square as well. In the context of advertising, fintech getting into advertising is a very hot topic right now. JP Morgan announced a program for using credit card data. There's Cardlytics is a public company. PayPal just recruited senior executives to start building their advertising world. Do you think this is just a cash grab, or is there something real here? Are these going to be sustainable media businesses?
I think the biggest challenge with fintech as a pure advertising platform is the surface area where you show ads. Because if you show ads, I do think it's a very, very powerful targeting signal. But I think the challenge is going beyond pure targeting to also owning the ad surface. The question is, where do you show the ad surface? And I think there is contextual surfaces within a fintech app like PayPal. You can show interesting ads. I just don't know how big it is. I think it's a classic offer stuff. But as we know, advertising is not all about offers. It goes beyond that. And so the question is, if you are to show a movie trailer, is that the right context? If you want to see a movie trailer or a PNG product that you don't buy right there, are those the right products? And we know that, obviously bottom of the funnel thing, I think Cash App has done a good job of offers, like they show DoorDash offers and so on. But I don't know if the surface area that fits, more than there's probably a few verticals that can do well, probably automotive, and there's some big verticals, financial services, automotive, travel, dining, etc. But there's also QSR exactly. But I don't know beyond that. Retail, on the other hand, retail media is something, that's the other thing that's emerging, right? As I'm sure you've done podcasts on that. That's the other thing where, I think if they can partner with a retail media platform, that combination of retail media inventory plus financial data could really turbocharge retail media spaces. So I hope they do both first party and help third parties.
I think those are good points. There is limited surface area about the amount of time consumers spend with their financial providers. And as soon as you start using the data outside of that context, it gets like a little creepy, and, you have your credit card company selling ads, doesn't feel like they're working in your interest. So the last topic I want to talk about was angel investing. You're one of those people who in the Bay Area can be identified just by your first name. I often see entrepreneurs say things like, Gokul's investing, just assuming I know who you are.
It's because the last name is too hard to pronounce.
Did I do an okay job, or did I butcher it?
We've known each other for 17 years or 20 years. I hope you do a good job.
Yeah. So Gokul, Balaji, those sort of people investing in this, so you have to get in. So tell me about investing once again within the context of the future of advertising and marketing. What have you invested in? Is AI a big thing, and how do you see it playing out?
I personally think next gen marketing is going to be for a perpetual thing, right? I mean, the reality is marketing is not, even though MarTech as it stands has gone through ups and downs, the reality is marketing is a very, very deep profit pool. There's hundreds of billions. Well, obviously, if you include Google and Facebook, there's trillions of dollars of marketing, of market cap in the space broadly. And so the question that we have to ask is, how does AI transform how marketers think? And I think as people turn, instead of search, or in addition to search, as people turn to LLMs to think about how LLMs are presenting. For example, I find myself using Google for, a smaller set of queries than I did earlier. I find myself turning to Claude or ChatGPT or things like that. Ask it questions about companies, about products, about my behaviors, etc. Marketers are going to start thinking about how's my brand presented in these contexts. So I invested in a company called Bluefish, and I think a lot of it is basically this guy, the founder, CEO Alex Sherman, who started Promote IQ, which you might remember as one of the early retail media. It was a pioneer in retail media. I was an advisor to Promote IQ, and they were bought by Microsoft 10 years ago. And they were bought 10 years ago. So they started even before that. And so Alex is just one of those visionaries who sees the future before the future is here. And so we don't know what shape the future is going to take, but we all know that LLMs are going to be an important part of users' journey through the funnel. And so I think it's important for brands to figure out how they want to be positioning these LLMs. So Bluefish is still early. I'm betting on Alex and his understanding of marketers and trends, and that he's going to build a great product. And he's going to, more importantly, he's going to evolve the product. I don't think any of us in the marketing AI space can have here's how it's going to be, and here's my product. But okay, we have a version 1 of the product, but it's got to really, because the underlying platforms are evolving so fast, right? OpenAI, what it means and what it's doing, whether it's video or the 4.0 model, all of those involved so much. And marketers, you got to be nimble. So any companies building in the AI marketing space have to be tremendously agile, and the roadmaps have to be correspondingly agile to keep up with innovation.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. I saw a presentation at the LiveRamp Summit in San Francisco a couple of months ago where the speaker was using an agent to shop for cars. And he would ask the agent things like, what's the best SUV for a family? And that just really was a light bulb moment for me, because it made me realize how unimportant branded websites may be in the future, or PDFs to download to get the materials. That's a perfect use for AI to help you with comparison shopping. And that second order question is, how do brands get the correct and the voluminous information into the AIs? It becomes a kind of SEO problem. It's like AIO. And that's an interesting problem that I imagine many startups are going to tackle.
That's exactly right. Are you seeing any AI marketing or those kinds of startups yourself? Have you seen them?
I'm hearing a lot about creatives, building creatives, adopting creatives, which is fine. I think there's some challenges with making that a big business. And obviously the Googles and Metas of the world are investing very heavily there. I think it's a good use case, but I'm not sure you become large businesses. Also, people doing a lot of trafficking automation. I think the same issue. Like, it's great, you do it, but I'm not sure you can turn it into the next, Trade Desk, multi-billion-dollar company. All right, I think we'll cut it off there. So this was an amazing conversation. I think everyone listening probably learned a lot. Probably many of them know you and will reach out. Gokul, thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Ari, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you again. Thanks, my friend.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back with Eric and our Cannes report. This podcast is brought to you by LiveIntent. Google's deprecation of third-party cookies continues to loom over us, putting future revenue growth in doubt. LiveIntent's Hero, that's helping identity reveal opportunities, offers a solution by transforming non-addressable audiences into addressable inventory using first-party data. Hero is scalable, interoperable, and integrated with major industry players, providing a robust framework for navigating the post-cookie era. See how Hero can help you quickly unlock your cookieless inventory at liveintent.com/hero. That's liveintent.com/HIRO. I'm now here with Eric Franchi, who is joining us from his villa in Cannes. Eric, how's the weather?
Bonjour. The weather's been great, nice and sunny and hot. Today, everything took a turn. It got cloudy and cooler with some sprinkles. So people were, I think, pretty concerned about the linen outfits, but there hasn't been anything torrential. That's the weather report.
Yeah, it's 95 and humid in New York City, so whatever you're doing, it's nicer than what I'm doing. So we want to hear what's going on. We want a vibe check. What is going on? Is the Croisette on the Croisette and in Cannes and in the Shake Shack in the hills? We want to get the deets, so give us your Cannes report.
Sure. I think you pronounced it well. I'm not even going to touch it. And it is Steak and Shake is the place here, but it's got...
What did I call it? I called it Shake and Steak?
You called it Shake Shack. It's got the Shake Shack font,
Shake Shack.
so everybody gets it confused. I've never been. But Vibe Check is largely positive. People are out in force. I've observed, and I think it's been validated with a couple of conversations that actually like a lighter presence this year in terms of like total attendance of the people that come to can and do meetings, around it, don't necessarily attend the formal events. Just seems like a little bit lighter. Again, I don't know if this has been validated, but like there seems to be less yachts, partly because of I think some construction going on, and I think partly because like smaller companies aren't doing it. I think that might be the most interesting thing. Like most of the yachts, besides some randoms, are the publicly traded ad tech companies. So like DV, IIS, Criteo, Magnite, they have the real big boy yachts.
Yeah, shout out to Terry Kawaja, who puts out the Lumascape of yachts every year, which is very useful. It's like a map of where you can find these companies on the pier. Yeah, I did hear that there was construction to this half as much space for yachts this year.
Yeah, for sure. So looks like if you're able to pay probably the increased rate, you were able to secure one. So all that stuff accrues to those with the larger market caps. But it's been good. My can is it's largely focused on meetings. So I didn't attend too much in terms of content. I did attend a couple of things we should talk about, but a lot of it is just, meeting with like those public companies, a lot of other, sort of like strategics and, obviously, here with the portfolio. So I have a pretty targeted experience.
Right. Instead of going to Midtown to meet with these people, you go halfway around the world and you sit in a yacht that does not go into the water at all. It's a parked yacht. So it's, if you get an actual ride in the yacht, that means you're a real VIP because it costs so much money for them to actually leave the dock that they only do that maybe once in the entire week of Cannes, and they only invite the really important people for that. So basically you're sitting in a parked yacht. It's hot. You're drinking rosé, and you could be doing the whole thing on like 45th Street in Madison and it'd be just as effective.
And worse yet, you have to take your shoes off and you have to like walk a shaky plank, which I hear people drop their phones all the time because it's so shaky. You can be prone to motion sickness while you're sitting there. So yeah.
Right. And let's have a shout out to the women of advertising who have much more difficult shoe wear options. I mean, the men, we can wear whatever we want, but women have to wear heels. They're on a dock. They're walking a mile on the croisette. Complicated, man. The women of advertising have it much worse than men do.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you want to do this? You want to get into some themes that have come out through conversations? You got stuff on your mind? Where you want to start?
Yeah, I'm not there, so I don't know what's going on. I just have snark. So you tell me what you're hearing.
Again, these are observations from a couple of days of meetings, but themes have come out. I think, and then this has been covered in the news. I think there's, a lot of conversation around two things. So first is the continued MFA fallout, MFA study. There was the ANA study that, kind of published some results where, there seems to be a decline in programmatic. So the results, Allison Schiff reported, I'm sure we'll put the link, something like programmatic open web campaigns are down from 44,000 sites per to 23,000 sites per on average, which is pretty wild. So, on one hand, you hear from the ANA that, good work is happening and MFA is decreasing. And then on the other hand, apparently there's some data from DV that says the opposite. Did you see that?
Yeah, so DV put out a number that MFA was up year over year in 2023. The first question is that time period is a little weird because the ANA study came out sort of in the second half of 2023, and Jounce has shown a very strong decline in the second half of 2023. So I think we're apples to oranges a little bit. And then the second issue, which I think some people kind of pointed out kind of humorously, is that DV didn't have an MFA product until late in 2023. So what's the baseline they're measuring? Well, what's the beginning of 23 number if they didn't have a product measuring it? Kind of a little bit of head scratcher. I think I might dive into this in my weekly newsletter coming on Monday if I can figure out how to make it interesting enough to fill a couple paragraphs. But yeah, it's a problem. Everyone's got their eyes on it, basically.
Yeah. So there's this focus on MFA and open web programmatic, and then on the other side, there's it seems that the open web programmatic and open web in general is in a real state of transition. And in some ways, it's in a state of decline. And in some ways, that decline is just coming from this combined force of focus on MFA and then focus largely by the trade desk on, trying to create this idea of, the open web should be premium environments. So one of the only things that I did in terms of sitting in on content at the Wall Street Journal house, called the Journal House, it was actually a really good panel. I purposely went there because I rarely get to see him speak. Jeff Green was on a panel with was a publisher of Dow Jones or CEO of Dow Jones, the CEO of Ad Fontes. So it was just interesting to sort of like talk about or hear them talk about rather this frankly dire situation about state of news and news publishers, because news publishers are apparently like getting hit with a blunt force instrument of the category being blocked.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so many things going against the open web at the same time. Did you ask Jeff to be on the podcast?
We said hello. We shook hands, and then he was whisked into like this makeshift green room. But I'm going to follow up with an email, Jeff.
Fair.
We made eye contact. You know what was on my mind.
Yeah, I met Kara Swisher at the IAB Tech Lab last week, and I was about to ask her to be on the pod, whether I just knew she's too busy. But I put it in, I planted the seed. I mentioned architecture a couple of times, and now I'll try to follow up in some way to get her on. But anyway, I think I'm not picking sides here. I'm not saying like Jeff and Trade Desk's list is a bad thing or a good thing, but I think it generally goes towards this problem of the open web is sort of infinite. There's so much distribution. There's so much supply. Any yokel can create a website and try to monetize it. And what the industry has been trying to do over the last, quite some time, 10, 15 years, is reduce supply. They did that through viewability, reduces supply. Ads.text reduces bad supply. Now, include lists, MFA, blocking, that sort of thing. It's another way of doing it. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but the overall theme is reduce open web supply.
The ultimate way to skin the cat is by making premium publishers the web, right, from an advertising perspective. And, it was interesting to hear Jeff say it in context, because I've heard these things before, but basically it's like, I can't believe it's controversial. We posted, the 100 premium publishers. They're, largely like streamers and audio and news. And that was controversial. And I don't know why. And he actually made an interesting point when talking about like why there's this double standard around news. He's like, Netflix could have a documentary about Jeffrey Dahmer and it's a hit, and they'll probably run ads against it. And anything about Jeffrey Dahmer on a news publisher website will get blocked. So it's like there's just like there's I think some simple things to happen there. He also said that those 500 publishers, presumably on the TTD 500 or SP 500, comprise 50% of the sort of like open web revenue. So there is this like concentration happening at the top, which I think points in the direction of this thing like looking a little bit more like the TD 500 than not.
I don't know, but like 50% seems low, right? If you took the top 7 or 8 cable channels, it'd probably be 90%, right? Top magazines.
Yeah, I don't know the methodology, but it was cited like in a follow-up post.
I'm not saying it's inaccurate methodology. I'm making the point that the web is still pretty Wild West. There's still another 500. There could be SP 1000, and you'd probably get to 75%. If Jeff and the Trade Desk thought they can list a top list of publishers and not make someone upset, like that's pretty naive, right? It's like, hey, here's the 100 most popular kids in our high school. What's everyone else going to think? Just on that basis.
Related to that, I spent some time with publishers, like big premium publishers that sort of out here doing their thing. And I don't get the sense that, just picking up some more digital ad revenue is going to completely stabilize and bring those publisher businesses back to health. A lot of them are talking about the fact that the consumer is now spending their time on the walled gardens and interacting with publisher content on the walled gardens. And they have this, inherent inability outside of like branded sponsorships to monetize this stuff. So and Brian Morrissey writes about this stuff in a way better way than, I can ramble on it. But this is like really, this is a big topic of camp.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's been a big topic for years, but in the past year, really, I think as referral traffic is drying up from the social networks, there's fewer and fewer clicks coming from Meta and from Google to these news sites, plus AI, which probably will make it worse, plus cookie deprecation or signal loss, which will make the actual monetization of those people worse. It feels like a perfect storm that's been brewing for a while against, ad-supported open web publishers. The streaming people have subscriptions, right? They're getting paid every day. They have ARPU that's much higher than a news site, whatever. So there's different flavors of what's going on. And I tried to kind of reconcile that a bit in my post a couple of weeks ago, what I called like the internet publishing map, or I forget what I called it, but it's available in our archives at News Architecture TV, where I kind of put people into quadrants and tried to explain where the different dynamics are.
Okay. So that's a sort of angst around all things like open web programmatic and publisher. On the positive side, like there's so much enthusiasm around CTV. It's like the sort of one and two topic of conversation for anybody here. And then number two or number one, depending on who you are, being retail media. And, there's been a real, I think, changing of the guard in terms of the visible presences of what used to be like kind of generalist ad tech companies and RMNs full stop. RMNs have beach sponsorships. RMNs are throwing events. RMNs are being wooed, by all of the sort of kind of tech infrastructure. Somebody said, I don't think it's necessarily accurate because they don't necessarily hold these budgets, but like RMNs are like the new agencies in terms of the attention that they're getting here.
It's a little weird because RMNs, or commerce media in general, is generally considered to be taking budget primarily from trade budgets, meaning that the people who sell the products on the retailers are the ones who are diverting dollars towards promoting their products. It's not necessarily taking from top line TV and stuff like that, which would imply that a place like Cannes would probably be a big waste of their money, because Cannes has big agencies, big budgets, glamorous ads, etc. I would love to get a better sense of, like, are there top 100 advertisers who are non-endemic spending money on Walmart or the Walmart Media Network or on Uber or wherever? And, I'm not really seeing those ads, but they may be happening. Maybe there's a lot of budget moving. That would be a big story for somebody to kind of unravel and figure out what's going on there.
Yeah. I think that people are trying to will it to happen, oftentimes through activations like this. Like we were talking about United, their ad network last week. I mean, United had a welcome event for my flight at the gate. It was fantastic.
You're flying United, I imagine, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. United to Nice. They're like, okay, well, 95% of these people are going to Cannes. So a welcome event, a packet in the seat back, a reception here. So they're going big, and that's got to be the thesis, right?
Yeah, but I'm going to bet that 90% of their revenue is going to be from Marriott and from a credit card company. And those companies already have long-standing relationships with United, and they didn't need to do anything to get that money.
I don't know. Remains to be seen. Anyway, so just a giant presence of the RMNs. And then, the other, I think, big topic that I would say is more positive than negative is around how AI is going to, affect the space, and, just a general enthusiasm around how it's going to be transformational in positive ways for people's businesses. Seems to be, from a practitioner perspective, not a lot happening. So it's like still kind of theoretical. And that's where hopefully, sort of like I spend a lot of time trying to pull the future forward with stuff that we're doing. But it's, clearly like the third most dominating topic of Cannes.
Yeah, I bet. People still trying to figure out how it fits, I imagine, for the most part.
Yeah. And then, just from a personal perspective, I get stopped all the time now, and people ask about, the pod, and they talk about the pod, and they talk about how they listen to it every week. And I, try to like sincerely thank everybody because it's pretty amazing. But it's like, maybe that's the one thing that you're missing out on, Ari, is getting stopped on the crossette. Like, wow, that was a Jersey way of saying it. Every 2 seconds, because there's just listeners out there, and it's fantastic. And if I miss you, I'm sorry. It's been awesome to hear from our listeners.
Love to hear it. I have people apologizing. They come up to me and say, I'm sorry, I don't listen to the pod. I don't have time. I don't listen to the pod. I'm like, hey, it's cool, man. Read the newsletter. I have no problem with that.
We don't know if you listen. That's not how it works, people.
Yeah, we also don't know. You can just say you listen. That's fine. Just say, what you said last week was really funny, and the odds are I'll know what you're talking about.
Amazing. All right. Well, that's the Cannes experience. One more day and I'm out of here.
So some news this week, right? You want to talk about the news up to, we're recording this on Wednesday?
Yeah, sure. So Mozilla made an acquisition, company Anonym, which is a clean room-ish tech developed by previous employees. Did you look into this one? Yeah,
I did. I found out I was an investor. I didn't even realize, so good for me.
Seifert.
From Eric Seufert's nice. Heracles Capital, which I'm an LP on, was an investor here. One of the founders was a well-known executive from Facebook, Brad. I'm having a hard time remembering his last name. Smollett? He ran a lot of the measurement initiatives at Facebook, including DAR, which I was the co-founder of through Nielsen. So he was a big part of that. So the resumes of the founders were amazing. They were trying to do something. It sounds very clean roomish. It's matching identities in the cloud in a privacy protected way. Mozilla has dabbled in ad tech in the past. At one point, they were selling ads on their home screen, but they're very privacy conscious. It kind of sounds like they're looking to build like some sort of attribution type product in the browser to match Sandbox or to match Apple's efforts. It's not clear exactly, but it seems like a pretty interesting opportunity here.
So reading the tea leaves, they could be coming back into advertising in a big way if they're going to look for something that solves this.
Yeah, they certainly could be. I mean, I think that it's a nonprofit, so they always have sort of execution issues with Mozilla with being like aggressive. And I think in their previous attempts at ad tech, they really kind of tiptoed in. They didn't really do anything that exciting. But maybe they're planning on using the user browsing data in a very privacy protected way to create an ad product. That would be interesting. And it speaks to the power of PET, privacy enhancing technologies, and being a hot space.
Yeah, for sure. So that's cool. This is what happened last week. So TTD, I think this dropped like Friday, threatened to demonetize Yahoo Video over accusations of mislabeling or misrepresenting its inventory. So basically, misdeclaring video inventory as in-stream, I think was the accusation here. Yeah,
I think the accusation is it's outstream and they're calling it in-stream, or maybe it's in banner and they're calling it in-stream CTV. We covered this a couple of months ago that the IAB issued some standards about video labeling, and they had been sort of moribund for a long time. They weren't really being enforced, and then I think Google started enforcing them, and then several people online had made the case that this was actually a really big deal and that the other shoe was going to drop on this. A lot of demonetization was going to happen. And this is, a little bit of a clash of the giants, one of the largest web properties and the largest independent DSP going head to head on this. It seems resolvable. I mean, ultimately it's about understanding what inventory you're buying, but it kind of speaks towards what we were just talking about 5 minutes ago, which is less crappy inventory, more good inventory, restricting supply, and giving buyers what they want. So I think it's overall a good thing. Assuming the trade desk is acting in good faith, and this really is a mislabeling problem, then this is the sort of thing you want to see as a buyer.
Yeah, agreed. One other follow-up piece from last week, there was the Oracle shutdown of their advertising business. This was a big one, big topic of conversation at Cannes. A lot of people were saying, like, I'd like to buy this being Moat or Grapeshot or Bluekai or like Datalogics, like whatever the five businesses or so were. And I actually had a conversation last night with someone who knows like Oracle well and knows this stuff well. And I learned that Oracle does not sell businesses that it plans on sunsetting. They sunset the business. So there's no like I was thinking maybe there's like a tax benefit to like writing it off and selling it. It's like they just shut it down and they move on after something proves to not work. So everybody that's been like circling the wagons it sounds like Grapeshot might be the crown jewel here, wanting to acquire Grapeshot. It just sounds like you got to move on. Which is interesting though, because also on the other side of this is $300 million that $2 billion turned into $300 million, but there's $300 million that's up for grabs. And how much of that is, contextual versus verification is an interesting question. I don't know, but there's a play to be made here.
Yeah, so the only new news that's come out in the past week is that there is a shutdown date, which is September 30th, which is ironic given that Q4 is the biggest quarter. So they're not even trying to keep it going for Q4. I still haven't heard much about the employee situation. I assume a lot of people are losing their jobs. It's an interesting topic about companies that don't want to sell stuff. I've seen it a couple of times in my career. The only thing Google's ever spun out is Niantic, which turned into Pokemon Go. And that wasn't exactly a spin out. And then, I used to work at Comcast, and there's often questions about Comcast. And one of the things I heard about Comcast was like the company has such pride and is in its origins and in the Roberts family and how they grew it, and it's profitable, that they would never sell anything because it would be an admission of defeat.
They're big businesses to us, right? These, $300 million, but for Oracle, this is not significant. So the financial gain is not motivating to them on this one. And it makes sense. And there's assets we've seen sunsetted that would have been pretty neat, like some ad servers, right? LiveRail or Atlas, right?
Atlas was shut down. Yeah, there's a long list. There was some speculation online about, well, is this a hidden buy signal for the stock market for DV and IAS? Maybe. I mean, I think those companies are very highly valued already. So adding a little bit of growth, 50 million over the year, I'm not sure that moves the needle. Certainly good for our friend Mario Diaz at Pure 39, who's left as one of the only contextual standalones. There's lots of folks that do contextual, but bundled with ad sales. So, like SeedTag is an example that's come up a bunch of times. They just did an acquisition. They do contextual, but it's an ad network. They don't just sell the data. I think Pure 39 is one of the only standalone data providers in that space.
And then just, this is Wednesday. There's been a lot of news this week, a lot of like partnership announcements. Mo Choktai from MIQ, I think he created or he's been promoting something called adtechpartnerships.com. And it's a tracker that in real time, via submissions, all of the partnership announcements are in this feed. And it's like a main feed and a CTV feed and a commerce media feed. It's pretty cool. We should link to it. Mo's doing good work on this one. So shout out to Mo. You'll get your fill of all sorts of product announcements and partnerships and integrations. All you can handle if you go there.
I think I'm going to create a website that just tracks all the micro publishing ad tech websites because I keep finding new ones I've never heard of. It's just amazing how many little niches there are out there who are doing like newsletters or podcasts or whatever it is. Oh, yeah, this is nice. The Cannes 2024 partnership tracker. This is quite something. I think we've solved our news of the week problem. We'll just get an RSS feed from this and talk about it every week.
The next move is to acquire Mo.
I'm totally going to acquire this. Like, Mo, give me your Venmo. I'm sending you some money. We got to put some ads on this thing.
Amazing. Okay. All right. Well, everybody, hopefully you have a great week and you arrive safely, and we're back at it next week, same time, same place in the US.
Absolutely. I hope you have fun the rest of the time. Have a good trip back.
Thank you. See everybody soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.